an individual will spend around 17 years in a refugee camp after a disaster. And in these moments, at least in 2009, you weren't able to work, you weren't able to go to school, you had to stay in these encampments where food was delivered and dropped off, and where you were disconnected from your community.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Every week, we are trying to inspire you with cool and innovative ideas from people with a heart to serve others in small and large ways around the world. And we are so excited to be part of Rotary International. Almost 1.2 million members around the world and 36,000 clubs. Got that updated this week. Learning different ways that they can listen and find the effective ways to make a difference where it is needed. And so our speaker today is with Libraries Without Borders, which I believe started as a Bibliothèques Sans Frontières, which is probably a not perfect way to say that. But regardless, you might think, libraries. All right. Oh my goodness. The different cool things that are part of Libraries Without Borders and Ideas Box and all of the interesting things you're about to hear about from our speaker, Azure Grimes, is going to inspire you for sure. So with that, I hand it over to Azure. Azure, welcome.
Thank you. First of all, thank y'all so much for allowing me to come here today and talk about Libraries Without Borders. One, I am very passionate about libraries. As a fellow kid who went to the library that was in my neighborhood every summer for summer reading, I think my mom used it as an excuse to get us out the house, and it worked. So now, with Libraries Without Borders, we partner with all these groups, and I'm going to tell you all about our work. So to start with introductions, like I said, my name is Azure Grimes. I am the Senior Program Manager for Libraries Without Borders, and I have been with Libraries Without Borders now for a little over 2 years. I started out as our Baltimore Project Coordinator, leading our efforts in Baltimore City, which I will talk more about our domestic work, and have since transitioned into the Senior Program Manager, while I'm taking the lead on more of our national programs in Oakland, California, and San Antonio, Texas, Baltimore, Maryland, as well as in Minnesota, St. Paul specifically. So Libraries Without Borders, U.S. We are an international organization, but today we're going to talk about our U.S. work and about our innovative solutions for education and digital access. So as Rushan mentioned, we started off in 2009 as Bibliothèques Sans Frontières. I also do not speak French very well, so that is my best interpretation of that, which I will call BSF. BSF, we simply started as a book donation company. In 2009, we were distributing books in, Central Paris, across West Africa, in various groups in Haiti, distributing culturally relevant books. And it wasn't until we came to Haiti in 2009 during the massive devastation that impacted the island. And so while we were there, we realized, we are a book donation company. We need to take a step back. We need to make room for mutual aid. We need to make room for Red Cross. We have to make room for all these life-saving services and access. And what folks from the community were telling us was that, no, we need you to stay. One, because internationally, we discovered that, typically an individual will spend around 17 years in a refugee camp after a disaster. And in these moments, at least in 2009, you weren't able to work, you weren't able to go to school, you had to stay in these encampments where food was delivered and dropped off, and where you were disconnected from your community. And so we had all these people from various walks of, neighborhoods and of different regions, not knowing each other and trying to access the same foods and the same assets and not really connecting. In times of disaster, you want to survive, and survival is key. And, you're surrounded by people you don't know, people who aren't speaking the same language. It's confusing. You're disconnected from your family. And so we realized in BSF that providing opportunities for education and programming was one way to deter and to create a connection. Once parents saw their children talking with children from across the camp, then they were like, maybe I don't want to talk with them yet. We need to stay central. We need to, stay, solid as a unit. But seeing their children playing with the other kids, seeing facilitators come and doing book clubs, they started to see more and more the opportunities of connection. And so parents were talking with parents, individuals started to connect more. And that opportunity for literacy and for really building out programs based off of their needs and their interests was really how BSF transformed our entire mission. And so our major priorities across all of our international programs is meeting people where they are. And we mean that quite literally. In these spaces, we realize that there are a lot of groups dedicated to this work. There are people in schools, school programs that have specific regions covered. We have churches, we have community centers, we have mutual aid services. And, all these spaces where people have to come to this place to receive a service. And so while we were in Haiti, while we were discovering this, we realized how can we create outreach programs where we can come to the people, where people don't need to take time out of their day to go on transportation, where they don't need to find research and figure out what the programs and the connections are. If we can just bring them directly to the source and see what happens. And so throughout this experimentation, throughout this discovery, we have 4 main focus areas that really built. One is bridging the digital divide. And I will talk a lot about the digital divide, specifically in our US work and how important that is. And 2, one of our big challenges that we face is reducing and how access to information is a privilege. Having access to libraries, having access to online tools, having access to these services is a privilege. And we start to see that those with lower economic statuses are less accessible to these tools. And so the idea that information is only available to those with the most privilege is just completely against what nonprofits should believe in and what human-centered work should really be surrounded by. Another interest that came up within our work was strengthening civic engagement. There is a lot of misinterpretation around people's interests around voting, around policies, around advocacy. People are really interested in what's going on in their neighborhoods and in their communities. They just might not have the time to dedicate. They might not know the specific laws that are in place, but people are interested and they want to learn more. So providing opportunities for that. And the next, empowering communities. I am not in the position where I'm able to tell anyone what is best for their lives. Part of equity is providing everyone with the same opportunity to develop their own measurement of success. And so through our international work in Paris, through our work in the US, we really stick to that standard that we are not trying to save communities from themselves. They have the tools, they have the answers, they have the resources. They just might need access. They might need someone who can speak the lingo to the right people. And they already know the solutions that they carry. They want to trust organizations that will listen to them. And so in our early days of international work, we came up with the Ideas Box, which is like the coolest thing ever. I was able to go to Paris, France early last year in January, and I got to see the Ideas Box live and in person. So if I could just rewind, the Ideas Box is this really great tool designed by Philip Stark, and it is this portable multimedia tool. And so you see these 4 quadrants in these 4 boxes. Each of these boxes can be transformed into chairs and tables inside of each quadrant. In the green quadrant, for example, and I'll show it over here, kind of lays out like that, where this is about like an 8-foot by 6-foot box. Inside the green box are about 150 books that you can categorize based on the community. In the blue box is for media. So there's a projector, a TV, and you can get specific DVDs because DVDs are really cool for like any area. In the yellowish box over here, and this is where you'll find the hotspot. So we can put up like 5 tablets, I believe 10 laptops can be transported through this box. And this entire box is a Wi-Fi. So once you can emit that, get it set up on the networks, you just spread it out and it's good to go. And the coolest thing about this is that, we were trying to navigate this, using DIY stuff. Like we would break tables from Amazon. We had like our laptops from the library. We had books from, our Paris offices. And once we partnered, with this designer, he was like, let me just make it easier. Let's try to create this so that every single aspect of this tool can be utilized and it can be picked up and transported to different parts. So this was our first project that really came off and, launched into our international work. And so since the start of the Ideas Box, we built this in 2009. We have since spread this, across different areas internationally. And so just one case study of the Ideas Box, we have over 90 boxes in over 20 countries, and I'll show you all those data sets soon. But this one specific case study for the Ideas Box is from Bangladesh. And so in 2018, like right before COVID, we installed 6 Ideas Box in the Kutupalong Refugee. And so this community had approached us and they said, we saw your work in different areas of West Africa. We're interested in this Ideas Box. How does it work? Through partnerships, through literally flying down to Bangladesh and working with people directly, we were able to ship 6 of these large boxes there. And then COVID hit. And so then we found ways to transform this, community hub, the space that was used for learning, the space that was used for games, for, tools and excitement, could now be used to get folks registered for vaccines, to provide health information around COVID-19, to help prevent the spread of fake news, which is extremely vital when it comes to the digital divide. It's teaching folks how to know what's a reputable source and what's credible, and even training the Rohingya volunteers that were in the community to do this work, because a part of our goal is to not stay. We want to build and empower communities to do this work on their own. And then once they feel secured, once they've started building out their programs, we will phase out and give them full control of the ideas. So this will no longer be a Libraries Without Borders project by 2020. Our goal is for this to stay in the community and just be a community. And so that's the goal of all of our projects. Ultimately, the goal of nonprofits is to work us out of a job. And so we really believe that by putting it directly in the hands of community members so that they can take on the ownership of these projects. And so this is just one case study where initially we started with around 5 kids that were involved with the box. They didn't quite understand how it worked. And then within a month, more and more families were coming in. And so now, by providing hand sanitizer, disinfectant spray, and all that stuff, we have around 30 frequent and daily visitors to each Ideas Box in Bangladesh. It's very, very cool. And so this is just a little factoid about Ideas Box and some of our work. We have 7 years of global reach. So we are still a young and spunky organization, still getting started. And just to highlight a few data points. So we have 94 Ideas Box we've implemented. We have 1 million visits from all of these boxes across the world. Each box is customizable for that language, for that community, for that internet access. Some communities are in complete disconnected zones. Internet is very, very hard. Some have internet access and that's not the full need. So we try to tailor each Ideas Box to that specific community and work with them to train them on how to use it, how to transport it, and create a 3-year plan for us to hand over the Ideas Box for them to continue on. And so this is just a little bit of information. And we have over 20,000 languages and content and information, and it's just so cool. And when I was in Paris last year, we had the Ideas Box in a homeless shelter in central Paris. And so they had it set up in the gym, and there were some people that were watching movies that were watching Taken, which I haven't seen Taken in a while. And I was like, okay, you're watching Taken. Can I sit down and watch with you and ask about your experiences? We were playing Connect 4 with them. They were very good at Connect 4, and I'm very competitive. So, I was like, you're doing so well. But it was just really exciting to be able to touch it, to feel it, to see it. So that is one of our flagship international programs is the Ideas Box. And so going into our U.S. programs, Libraries Without Borders started and launched in 2015. We wanted to bring this idea of one, our international friends created this idea of meeting people where they are, providing tools directly to neighborhoods and communities and bridging the digital divide. How can we bring the same philosophy, the same ideology into the U.S.? As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of spaces for literacy, a lot of places for community building, community centers, churches, after-school programs. And so what we really wanted to reach were the general public, the people who work the third shift, who are working from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. and can't go to the typical 9 to 5. We wanted to reach the parents who use public transportation and they have to take the day off work to go to the Department of Social Services. I live in Baltimore City, so I'm based here in Baltimore, and I have used public transportation all of my life. It's awful. It's awful. Trying to get an appointment anywhere on time is awful. Going into the social services, thinking you're going to be there for an hour and it's really 6 hours. And I am a single, young person. I don't have much time on my hands. But if you're a mother, if you're a father, if you have kids, the idea of bringing your kids onto the bus, waiting in the waiting room for 6 hours, talking to someone who doesn't know what you're talking about or your name, it gets really frustrating. So how can we make this easier for people to access this so that these are no longer challenges and barriers to this? And so we wanted to reimagine what these anchor institutions could look like. How can we redevelop outreach to look differently? And so in our early days, we experimented with places like public parks. We brought a librarian, a rolling tray with a laptop, and a Wi-Fi hotspot. We went to the local park in New York, which was great. And then it rained, so we had to head out. So that wasn't a sustainable practice. We went to corner stores, and that was great for those, one-to-one, I have a question, I need to get a quick brochure, but not really that structured engagement we were looking for. And that's when we went into laundromats. And we discovered through these different areas that laundromats were a really effective way to reach the folks that we wanted to connect to. I use laundromats. Laundromats are kind of boring. You sit, you do your laundry, you kind of put your clothes in the washer, you wait for an hour, you put it in the dryer, you wait for another hour. If you're lucky, you fold it while you're there, which is what I do, but even that is a whole thing. And so there's all this waiting time, sitting, you're on your phone, you're watching a sci-fi movie on the TV that can barely hear, and you have children running around the laundromat, which is cute, but also please get out of the cart. That's not safe. And so we discovered that if we brought librarians and if we brought literacy tools to these launch, there was an uptick in engagement in literacy. Instead of people kind of sitting on the chair, sitting in their cars on their phones, we saw more and more parents and children engaging with things like books in the laundry. We left things like building blocks, rugs, like those little alphabet things. And we saw more and more that librarians were modeling this behavior. We're showing, parents how you can read to your children while you're at the laundry. How you can use things like the washer. Like, let's count how many bubbles you see. What color do you see? Oh, that's blue. No, that's white. Let's go over the colors and using that as a space for learning. And so through this work, we launched our first program, the Wash Learn Initiative, which I will affectionately call WALL-E. So if you hear me say WALL-E, it is Wash Learn Initiative. So we launched this project in 2016. We started with one site in the Bronx, New York, and have since expanded into over 16 laundromats across the country. And that's to say 9 states, because we've just expanded to a couple states in the last couple. So we have laundromat sites where we install computers, iPads, free books, and other programs into library spaces. We work with business owners and laundromat managers to create these literacy-rich spaces. And so in Baltimore City, we have 4 laundromats that have up to 6 laptops, have iPads that stay there all day and are accessible for free. In San Antonio, we have 3 sites with a similar model. Some Wash and Learn programs have English language classes. They're all specific to these different neighborhoods and these different regions. And so we have provided things like free tax preparation. I was in a laundromat literally doing tax intake with people next to their washers. And I was like, I'm not looking at your clothes, but I do need your SSI. You can write it down. We were doing English language classes where we had a cohort of 12 people every week that would come every Thursday from 3 to 5 and work with our librarians to do English language classes. We had books that were flying off the shelves. I would literally go to laundromats, throwing books at people like, they're free, take them. And so much so that I would come back to the laundromat after a week and the bookshelf would be entirely empty. And the staff would be looking at me like, where are the books? And I'm like, they're gone. And that's great. So we need to restock them. And so we were able to really expand this work and work with libraries to train them on how to do outreach outside of a library. Working in a laundromat is very different than working in a library. And so we have created trainings to show librarians how to do this innovative outreach a little bit differently. So we have hired outreach program teams in Baltimore and San Antonio and Chicago and Detroit who are specifically dedicated to doing laundromat, parking lot outreach, and all these other spaces based off of a training we created in 2018. And so that's one of our flagship, important, great programs that I'm very excited about. And I'll try to move quick because I just have a lot to say and I'm very excited. But there is this one piece of data, and I love talking about data just real quick. In our very, very early stages in 2015, 2016, we wanted to do a study to show, what is the impact of bringing librarians, of bringing books, of bringing these literacy tools into a space like a library. And so here are some quick data sets to one show here are activities that people typically do at the laundromat. There's usually chatting, of course, folding clothes. People are on their phones, watching TV. And then after we installed, a free bookshelf, we had librarians coming in 2 hours a week, every Saturday to do story times. We had tactile learning tools at 3 laundromats, and we had them there for 3 months to see what would happen. And so after that 3 months, we saw that there was an increasing number of more and more people doing literacy-rich activities in a laundromat. Alongside, folding clothes, going on their phone, but more people were engaging in these services because it was there. How simple is it to provide access and then people actually using it? And you're like, wow, this is an actual benefit to a community and they're going to use it because it's accessible. And so with the Wash Learn program, we are still expanding. Currently, I just left the laundromat this morning. We're doing outdoor outreach programs. Our librarians are masked up. We have hand sanitizer. We're passing out free books in the parking lot of Laundry City, which is our flagship program in Baltimore, where they'll be there 8 hours every other Saturday to connect with community members and spread out library outreach services. And so during COVID, we're really trying to be mindful of, one, the safety of our staff and our community, but also to realize that, folks are still disconnected. They're just stuck at home. And so what essential businesses can we make sure are rich in resources and literacy so that folks still have access and everyone is kept safe? And so that brings me to our next project, which is called the Manufactured Housing Initiative. And so this is our program that we launched in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. Sorry, not Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this is a newer project that we launched last year, where if you're familiar with manufactured housing, they're colloquially called trailer parks. These are areas in rural Minnesota that are least connected to digital tools. So the libraries there aren't as rich and robust as maybe the urban and city libraries. Internet access is not as available because they don't have, fiber installed underneath cables and all that stuff. Internet is a whole thing. And so we were really researching in Minnesota, how can we expand internet access and how can we expand the capacity of rural libraries to do this similar work without as many resources, without as many grants, but still providing the essence of this program, which is meeting where they are. And so in 2 manufactured housing units, we are installing library services and library programs in storm shelters. And so people typically outside of storms use this as like a hangout zone. They have like their kids hanging out there. They might, catch up on work and study. And so we are installing laptops. We have hotspots that will be available during emergencies as well as every day. And we're working with librarians to come twice a week to do rounds around the manufactured housing unit, partnering with local public libraries to make sure that their team is learning how to interact and doing outdoor outreach. So we're building that training and we're hoping to launch that across more of our rural libraries, specifically in our San Antonio projects. So stay tuned for that later this year. And then the next project I want to talk about real quick is our learning hubs in Puerto Rico. So I mentioned that we have over 20 sites in the US. We have 2 sites in Puerto Rico. So one, they have an ideas box. They reached out to our team to transform, I believe it was an old library. It was a deconstructed library. It had been open for about 10 years. And they wanted to create a media learning center inside of this old library. We work with a lot of libraries, the Oakland Public Library, the Enoch Pratt Free Library, San Antonio Public Library. We try to partner with a lot of laundromats. So you'll see groups like Family Laundry, Laundry City, Hip Laundromat. We started partnering with local churches to build hybrid learning centers inside of their fellowships. So the Somerville Community Church in West Baltimore is transforming their entire second floor into a computer lab so that students can sign up for appointments and do their virtual learning in a safe space within their community. And so we're doing more and more of this work where we're reaching out to community gardens who want to intersect digital literacy with food equity. We're seeing an increase in churches who are trying to intersect mental health with digital literacy. And so this year, we are really hoping to expand our work, specifically in Oakland, California, in Baltimore, and San Antonio, and across the country. And we're hoping to meet with a ton of really cool people who are doing other cool work and maybe want to do it in a new venue. Like, have you thought about doing the Know Your Rights presentation by a dryer? It's possible, and I took pictures of it as evidence that it actually happened. And so that is it. That's all I have to say. That is my spiel. And I saw that there were a couple questions in the chat. I was talking so much I didn't get to see. So I will stop talking now. Thank y'all so much. And this was a lot of information, so I'm happy to answer anything.
Wonderful presentation, Azure. Thank you so much. Out of an interest in time, we're going to save all of our questions until after the recording. So we have a lineup of questions, and I'm excited to talk to you about these ideas for sure. But for those of you who've been joining us, watching this recording, note that there are a couple of things that we ask you to do. There is an opportunity to tell us you were here. And by filling that in and putting in your address correctly, your email address correctly, you can get an automated email that you can pass along to your club secretary if you're a Rotarian looking to make up a miss from your club. Additionally, at the bottom, you have our forum section where you can leave comments about what you heard in this program or any other part of the meeting. And we welcome you engaging us in discussion as a part of that venue for our interaction. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Azure, what is the last thing you want people to walk away with in their heads?
So the last thing I want people to walk away with is that connections don't happen in silos. Connections don't happen if you're territorial, if you are fighting for the same pot. Connections work a lot easier when we're all working together and coming into the same goal. And so with Libraries Without Borders, my hope is that one thing I bestowed onto y'all is the opportunity to not recreate the wheel, but to see who already has the wheels, who has like the little screwy things you put in the wheels, who knows about cars and has a manual, and to bring that team together versus trying to do it all yourself. So that's 100%. What I've been doing to my work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azure. And everyone, we will see you next week.